Zodiac labels can feel incredibly accurate because broad statements fit almost anyone. But in love, arguing over a partner's zodiac label can actually hide a concrete, unresolved behavior like why they constantly delay their replies to your texts.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we constantly use these, sweeping cosmic categories to try and make sense of our earthly, everyday frustrations.
AI Dialogue Lab.
Yeah.
Today we unpack the real relationship issue behind zodiac stories.
It really is such a fascinating dynamic. And, just to be super clear right up front, our mission in this deep dive is definitely not to debunk the fun of astrology.
Right, or like tell you to stop reading your horoscope.
Exactly. We are looking at this today entirely as a cultural metaphor. It's an entry point into a conversation.
Because what we really want to explore is the psychology behind why we lean on these labels in relationships so heavily, rather than treating astrology as this, deterministic rule book for who you should date.
Right, because there's a very specific, deeply rooted psychological comfort in believing the stars are dictating your love life. It takes the pressure off.
Totally. So we're going to dig into how cognitive bias basically tricks us into substituting these cosmic labels for actual, real communication.
And we're going to use that highly relatable, incredibly frustrating example you just brought up, the partner who just constantly delays their text replies.
Oh, man. We have all been there.
We really have. And we'll follow that one specific disagreement through 5 distinct stages today, unraveling what's actually happening in your brain and in your relationship when you swap a real behavioral issue for a birth chart.
So let's start with that feeling. You are sitting there staring at your phone. You see the read receipt.
Yep, the dreaded read receipt.
Exactly. You know they saw it. An hour goes by, then 2 hours. And that anxiety just starts bubbling up in your chest.
Of course it does. It's totally natural.
But instead of addressing the actual behavior, instead of saying, hey, it hurts my feelings when you ignore me for hours, you turn to your friend or you just think to yourself, ugh, they are such a typical air sign, always floating away, completely oblivious.
And right there, in that exact split second, you've completely masked the real issue.
Yeah.
You've taken a concrete behavior, the delayed text reply, and you've boxed your partner into this fixed identity.
But I mean, it feels better in the moment. That's the crazy part to me.
Oh, absolutely feels bad.
It feels like I've solved the puzzle, right?
Yeah.
It takes all the sting out of being ignored because suddenly, well, it's not about me, it's about the universe.
Exactly. It provides this immediate sense of certainty in a moment of acute uncertainty. But you have to look at what happens to the underlying emotional vulnerability there.
Right.
If you strip away the Zodiac joke, the real feeling underneath is usually something like, I feel unimportant to you right now, or I'm terrified that your silence means you're pulling away from me.
And that is an incredibly terrifying thing to admit out loud.
Right. It requires you to expose your own deep need for connection.
Which feels, honestly, entirely too naked for a random Tuesday afternoon.
Exactly. So by burying that vulnerability under a harmless little astrological joke, you protect yourself. You shield your ego.
But you also guarantee the problem never gets fixed.
Precisely. You've placed a cosmic Band-Aid over a behavioral wound. The communication gap is still there.
So let's explore the fallout of that.
Yeah.
If I keep doing this, if I keep saying they're just acting like they're signed every time they do something that bothers me, what am I actually doing to the long-term dynamic?
To understand the long-term damage, we can look at this framework called imago theory.
Imago theory. Okay, break that down for us.
Yeah, so this was discussed really beautifully by Dan Allender and Rachel Clinton Chen at the Allender Center. Basically, imago theory suggests that over time in our relationships, we slowly stop seeing the actual complex, changing human being right in front of us.
Wow.
Instead, we begin interacting with a fixed image, a thematic narrative that we've constructed about them in our own minds.
Oh, it's like taking a snapshot of someone on your second date and then just refusing to acknowledge that they ever grew up or changed their mind over the next 5 years.
That is a brilliant analogy. You interact with the photograph, not the person. Dan Allender actually shared this deeply personal story that illustrates this so well. He completely shaved off his beard, leaving only a mustache.
Okay, a huge visual change.
Massive change. He walked downstairs, stood right in front of his adult daughter, and she didn't even notice.
Wait, really? She didn't see it at all?
She looked right at his face and just asked him some mundane question. He literally had to ask her, "Do you see anything different?" before she finally realized her own father's face had fundamentally changed.
That is wild.
It shows how powerful these fixed images are. We lock people into expected visual and behavioral patterns. Our brains actually stop processing new information that contradicts the image we hold.
And a Zodiac label is basically the ultimate fixed image, isn't it? It's literally saying you were born under this constellation, so your personality is cemented in stone forever.
Precisely. And when we lean heavily on those labels, we lose this crucial psychological stance that the Allender Center calls epistemic humility.
Epistemic humility. I mean, that sounds a bit academic, but it feels like the core of what goes wrong here.
It really is. Epistemic humility is simply the awareness that our own perspective is inherently limited.
Right, like acknowledging we don't know everything.
Exactly. In a relationship, it's this profound understanding that while you might know your partner intimately, like how they take their coffee or their childhood trauma, you still do not know everything.
You definitely don't know their internal moment-by-moment motivations.
Yes. It's essentially admitting, I am not a mind reader, no matter how long we've been together.
Right. So when you label your partner a typical air sign who is cosmically destined to be a bad texter, you're using that to make them feel predictable.
Exactly. And the tragic result is that you completely halt genuine curiosity about their actual motives. You start asking, hey, why didn't you text me back today? Because you erroneously believe you already have the answer.
We think we're being insightful, but we're really just shutting down our own curiosity.
Exactly.
And what's fascinating to me is that this craving for certainty, this desire for a fixed image, isn't just happening in quiet conversations anymore. We are now outsourcing this to technology.
Oh, yes. This brings us to some truly compelling modern research. There's this fascinating study from researchers at the University of Macau and the University of Hong Kong.
Right. They looked at this phenomenon on Chinese social media called Jusho, right?
Correct. Zhuanshu is essentially an umbrella term for mystical and divinatory practices. But the researchers were looking at a very specific modern twist on it.
On the platform Shohongshu.
Yes. They investigated how millions of young people are using large language models, advanced AI, for divination. We are talking about algorithmic fortune telling.
Right.
Users are literally feeding their complex relationship problems, their birth charts, and their partner's behavioral quirks into these AI models, and then asking the AI for concrete predictions about their love lives.
So they're typing in, like, my boyfriend hasn't texted me in 4 hours, his moon is in Scorpio, what does the AI think he's doing?
Literally, yes.
It sounds almost dystopian. But, I mean, the underlying emotion is so deeply human. Why are they doing this?
The researchers dug into exactly that, and they found two intersecting pathways. One is just trend-driven curiosity. It's fun, it goes viral.
Sure.
But the other pathway is deeply rooted in event-driven anxiety.
There it is.
The data show that when people face high-stakes uncertainties, romantic turbulence, an unresolved fight, a distant partner, they experience this agonizing lack of personal control.
The anxiety of the unread text message, but scaled up to a breaking point.
Right.
So they turn to the AI just to get some semblance of control back.
Exactly. Divination here functions primarily as a psychological coping mechanism. It artificially lowers the heart rate. It creates a narrative where one didn't exist before.
We do need to pause and look at the boundaries of this research, though. The sources are incredibly explicit about what's actually happening here.
Absolutely. This is a vital distinction.
While these algorithmic or astrological divinations provide genuine psychological comfort for a panicked user, there is absolutely no scientific evidence that these systems causally determine personality traits or predict actual relationship outcomes.
None at all.
The AI is simply recognizing statistical patterns in language. It's generating text based on probabilities, not tapping into the cosmic fabric of destiny.
Right. The tool is successfully managing the user's anxiety, but it is not accurately predicting the partner's behavior. The comfort comes from the illusion of an answer.
So let me pose a challenge to you, the listener. Think about your own relationship right now. What is your recurring delayed reply equivalent? What's that specific, concrete behavior that annoys you, that you have neatly attributed to your partner's star sign or personality label?
Is it how they load the dishwasher? Running 10 minutes late? Identifying that specific behavior is step one.
Right. Learn to recognize the exact moment you substitute a cosmic label for a real, solvable behavioral issue. But wait, let's look at this from a purely practical standpoint for a second.
Okay, sure.
If I say my partner is stubborn like a Taurus about texting, isn't that just a helpful shorthand? Human communication relies on shortcuts. Why is it so damaging if it accurately describes a pattern?
It's a fair question. It certainly feels efficient in your head, but we have to look at what that shorthand actually does to the living ecosystem of your relationship.
Okay, what does it do?
Shorthand is dangerous because it almost instantly becomes a conversational dead end. Think about the mechanics of a disagreement. If the explanation is simply, "you are a Taurus," then there's nothing left to negotiate.
Oh, I see.
There's nothing to solve. The behavior has been elevated from a bad habit to an immutable fact of nature. It prevents conflict resolution entirely because it removes personal accountability.
And it removes the possibility of change. You're basically telling them, you can't help it, so why even try to fix it?
Exactly. It slams the door on growth.
Turns a verb, "you didn't text me," into a noun, "you are a bad texter." But if it's a dead end, why does that door feel so incredibly accurate when we slam it?
That's the million-dollar question.
Because honestly, when you're fuming about that unread message and you go read their astrological profile and it says, "this sign often retreats into their own world," it feels like an absolute bullseye. It feels like the universe just validated your anger.
That overwhelming feeling of the bullseye brings us perfectly into the next chapter of this dynamic. There is a deeply embedded psychological mechanism that explains exactly why these labels feel so undeniably accurate.
And what is that?
It is known as the Barnum effect, or sometimes the Forer effect.
Yes. This is one of my absolute favorite concepts in psychology. It really exposes the invisible strings pulling at our brains.
It really does. The Barnum effect describes our innate psychological predisposition to believe that generalized personality descriptions are uniquely and specifically tailored to us.
Or tailored to our partners.
Exactly. We read a paragraph that could literally apply to millions of people, and our brain insists, wow, this was written exactly for me.
And it's named after P.T. Barnum, right? The 19th century showman who said, "There's a sucker born to every man."
Right, because Barnum understood that a good performance offers a little something for everyone. But the actual psychological mechanism was formalized by a psychologist named Barnum Forer in 1948.
And the experiment he ran to prove it is just a masterclass in human cognitive blind spots. Let's really get into how this works.
So Forer was a professor, and he gave his classroom of students a standard personality test. He told them he was going to take their answers, personally assess them, and return a week later with a highly unique, individualized psychological profile for every single student.
He totally hyped it up. He made them feel like they were getting this deep scientific look into their own souls.
Oh, absolutely. But he was totally lying to them.
Wait, he didn't assess them at all?
Not even a little bit. When he handed the sealed envelopes back, he had completely thrown out their test answers. Instead, he gave every single student the exact same paragraph of feedback.
Every single one got the same text.
Yes. He actually cobbled the text together from a dime store astrology book he bought at a newsstand.
That is amazing.
It was filled with incredibly generalized statements. Things like, you have a great deal of unused capacity which you have not turned to your advantage. Or, at times you are extroverted and sociable, while at other times you are introverted and reserved.
Which, if you stop and think about it for 2 seconds, describes literally every human being with a pulse.
Exactly. Everyone has untapped potential. Everyone is outgoing sometimes and quiet when they are tired.
Right. But the context matters here.
Yes. Forer told them this was uniquely theirs. So after they read it in silence, he asked the students to raise their hands and rate the accuracy of the profile on a scale from 0 to 5, 5 being a perfect description.
And what was the average score?
The average rating across the entire class was 4.3 out of 5.
4.3. That is astonishing. It's almost a perfect score for a totally generic paragraph ripped from a horoscope book.
It really is incredible.
Why do our brains fall for this so easily? What is the evolutionary benefit of being so gullible?
Well, it's not necessarily gullibility. It's a byproduct of how our brains are wired to process information efficiently. The human brain has an incredibly strong preference for relatability and narrative coherence.
We are natural pattern matching machines.
Precisely. When we're presented with vague, open-ended information, our brains despise the ambiguity. So we actively do the work of connecting those vague dots to our own daily life occurrences.
Ah, I see.
If a statement says you value fairness but sometimes feel taken advantage of, you don't think about the millions of other people who feel that way. You immediately access a specific memory of a time you were treated unfairly at work.
You supply the specific evidence to validate the vague claim.
You do the work for it.
And we do this exact same thing with our partners, don't we? When a horoscope says they can be distant when overwhelmed, we immediately fill in the blank with the unanswered text messages from yesterday.
Precisely. We are the ones doing the heavy lifting, not the horoscope. And we have some fascinating, very concrete evidence of just how powerful this effect is from a study conducted in Kerala, India by researchers George and Silaja.
Okay, let's hear about this one.
They wanted to test astrology directly against the Barnum effect. So they took 300 volunteer students and gave each of them 2 different astrological readings to evaluate.
This experimental design is so clever because one of the readings was their actual astrological moon sign prediction, carefully calculated based on their real precise birth data.
Right, the real deal.
But the other reading was completely fabricated by the researchers, just a string of generic Barnum statements designed to sound profound.
And the results speak volumes about human cognition. Out of the 300 students tested, 198 of them, nearly 2/3, chose the fabricated generic Barnum statements as being a more accurate reflection of their personality than their actual astrological moon sign prediction.
That is just wild. 2/3 of the participants looked at their real cosmic chart and a fake list of generalities and said, yeah, the fake one is definitely me.
It powerfully demonstrates that our subjective validation of these readings has much more to do with the psychology of vague language than it does with the actual alignment of the planets.
We should definitely take a moment to look at the broader context here, though. Is the Barnum effect just an inescapable magic trick that works on every human brain equally?
Not entirely, and that nuance is really important. There's a cross-cultural study by Rogers and Soule, published in the Journal of Cross-Cultural Psychology.
Right.
They found that while preliminary data suggests the Barnum effect is a universal human tendency, the picture gets much more complicated when you control for certain demographic and educational variables.
They tested Westerners and Chinese nationals, right? To see if cultural background played a role.
Yes. And they found that the susceptibility to the Barnum effect actually drops off significantly, sometimes disappearing entirely, when you control for factors like a person's age, their general education level, and most importantly, their specific level of psychological knowledge.
Which is incredibly empowering. It means that simply being aware of cognitive biases, like the very act of you learning about the Barnum effect right now, actually provides a cognitive shield against them.
It really does. Furthermore, that same study revealed something quite surprising about belief systems. They found that Chinese nationals who reported a strong, genuine belief in astrology were still able to recognize that their own supposedly accurate Barnum profiles applied just as well to people in general.
Oh, wow. So they could see the generalization, they acknowledge the vagueness, even while holding on to their cultural belief in the practice.
Exactly. They could separate the metaphor from the literal truth.
So for the listener navigating a relationship right now, what is the practical value of understanding this 1948 classroom experiment?
It really comes down to decoupling.
Decoupling.
By understanding that these broad statements are mathematically designed to fit almost everyone, you can consciously start decoupling your partner's actual identity from the annoying behavior.
It's a paradigm shift. It's not that your partner is cosmically destined to be inconsiderate because they are an Aries. It's just a common human flaw dressed up in a universally applicable Barnum statement.
It's a way of shrinking the problem down to a solvable size.
It makes me think of an analogy. Leaning on a Barnum statement is like putting on a giant one-size-fits-all t-shirt and being utterly amazed that it manages to cover your torso.
Right. Of course it covers you. It was woven specifically to fit the widest possible range of bodies. There's no magic to the fit.
So if we're in the heat of the moment, the texts are unanswered, the frustration's boiling over. How can we spot a Barnum statement in our own internal monologue before we hurl it at our partner?
The easiest way to spot a Barnum statement is to look for a complete lack of specific, actionable parameter.
Okay, give me an example.
If you find yourself thinking or saying, "You are always so withdrawn," or "You just don't care about communication like I do," those are Barnum-like generalizations.
Because they apply to a vague mood or a broad personality trait, not a specific action.
Exactly. To spot the illusion, force yourself to ask a grounding question. Am I describing a concrete event that happened at 2:00 p.m. on Tuesday, or am I describing a sweeping personality trait?
And if it's a sweeping trait, you are likely operating under the illusion of a Barnum label, and you are about to start a fight that cannot be won.
Bingo.
That makes total sense. Grounded in the specific timestamp. But let's flip the perspective entirely here.
Okay, let's do it.
We've been talking about the person waiting for the text. What happens when the person who did the ignoring uses the label? Let's say you finally confront them. You say, hey, you didn't text me all afternoon. And they respond, somewhat defensively, look, I can't help being bad at texting. I'm just a fiercely independent Sagittarius.
Oh, that happens all the time.
Or, on the flip side, what if the complaining partner only seems to remember the 3 times the texts were delayed and is completely amnesiac to the 50 times their partner replied instantly?
Now we are shifting from the illusion of the Barnum effect into the heavy machinery of confirmation bias and a related concept known as the Pollyanna principle.
Let's unpack confirmation bias first.
Confirmation bias is arguably the most pervasive cognitive error we make. It's our brain's hardwired tendency to selectively notice, aggressively search for, and vividly remember information that confirms our pre-existing beliefs.
While simultaneously ignoring any information that contradicts that belief.
Exactly.
It's cherry-picking data to win a silent argument with yourself. You're building a legal case against your partner using only the prosecution's evidence.
Precisely. The brain is trying to reduce cognitive load. Processing near-contradictory information takes mental energy.
Right.
So if you have firmly labeled your partner as a bad texter, your brain will heavily highlight every single time they take 3 hours to reply. Those incidents are logged as massive hits.
They confirm the narrative, so they get stored in high-definition memory.
Yes. But what happens on Thursday when they reply in 2 minutes? Your brain simply files it away as an anomaly. It's a miss. It doesn't fit the narrative, so it doesn't get logged in your emotional ledger.
You literally forget their good behavior because it contradicts the label. That is terrifying because it means our memory of our own relationship is entirely compromised.
It is.
And you mentioned the Pollyanna principle. How does that fit into the partner who is using the label as an excuse?
So the Pollyanna principle, or positivity bias, is generally the human tendency to remember pleasant items more accurately than unpleasant ones. But in the specific context of self-protective labeling in relationships, it relates to how individuals use self-enhancement reasoning.
Self-enhancement reasoning.
Yeah. We all have a deep psychological need to view ourselves as good, capable people. We prefer positive, ego-flattering descriptions. So if a partner is confronted about being rude and ignoring messages, saying, "I made a mistake and hurt you," is ego damaging. Instead, they grab a flattering Barnum-like label.
Oh, I see where this is going.
They say, "I'm not ignoring you. I'm just an independent thinker who needs space to process."
Wow. They are weaponizing the label. They're turning a vague personality description into a self-protective shield to completely avoid accountability for just being inconsiderate with their phone.
Exactly. It's a defense mechanism dressed up as self-awareness. And we have fascinating evidence demonstrating just how powerfully intimate couples do this to each other.
Really? There's a study on this?
Yes. There's a study by Handelsman and McLean published in the Journal of Clinical Psychology that looked at the Barnum effect, but they specifically tested it within intimate couples versus strangers.
Okay, so they didn't just test individuals in a vacuum. They wanted to see how the relationship dynamic changed the bias.
Right. They brought couples in, had them take an ink blot test, and then they gave one partner a standard, completely generalized personality interpretation, while the other partner just sat there and observed.
And what did they find?
What they discovered adds a huge layer of complexity. They found that intimate couples rated the generalized fake feedback as significantly more accurate about their partner than strangers did.
Wait, really?
They actually remembered more details of the fake feedback, and they reported having far more faith in the validity of the psychological test itself.
Hold on. So, because we are deeply intimate with someone, because we love them and know them well, we are actually more cognitively primed to accept and confirm generic labels about them. That feels entirely backwards. Shouldn't intimacy make us see through the generalizations?
You would think so, right? But it actually works the opposite way. Our vast intimacy makes us much more susceptible to subjective validation.
How does that work?
Think about it. You have a massive database of memories about your partner. When the researcher hands you a generic statement like, "Your partner sometimes struggles to express their true feelings," you have thousands of memories to draw from.
No.
You can instantly scan your mental database, find the 3 specific hits from last year that match that vague statement, and totally ignore all the times they were perfectly expressive.
The intimacy provides the raw material for the confirmation bias to build the illusion.
Exactly. We use our deep knowledge of them against them, and we see this exact same confirmation bias playing out in a modern setting in that LLM divination study on Chalhomshu we talked about earlier.
We do, and it is a perfect modern parallel. The researchers analyzing the AI divination trend noted that users constantly engage in a behavior they categorized as retrospective confirmation.
Retrospective confirmation. Right.
Meaning they get a vague prediction from the AI, and then they actively twist their real life to make it fit.
Yes, they actively shape the narrative of their own lives after the fact to make the prediction look like a bullseye.
That's crazy.
The researchers documented cases where a user might claim the AI was incredibly accurate because it vaguely predicted a minor obstacle.
Okay, pretty vague.
Then, when the user got a mundane traffic ticket a week later, they aggressively reinterpreted their different AI tarot polls, ignoring all the things the AI got wrong, just to match the fact that the traffic ticket proved the algorithm right.
They are actively doing the psychological heavy lifting to make the AI look like a genius. They are acting as their own confirmation bias engine. We do need to look at the boundaries of this specific social media data, though.
We do. It is crucial to keep in mind that the evidence from the Zhuangsu study on social media is based almost entirely on self-reported user data and observational analyses of public posts.
Meaning the effect sizes of these behaviors vary widely.
Right. But more importantly, these observations are heavily influenced and often distorted by the platform's own recommendation algorithms.
Right. The algorithm dictates what we see. It inherently rewards sensationalism. The viral post is going to be the one where someone claims the AI perfectly predicted a marriage proposal down to the exact hour. That gets 1 million likes.
But the mundane misses, the thousands of posts where the AI was totally wrong and nothing happened, rarely get engagement, so they get buried.
Therefore, the public perception of how accurate these labels or algorithms are is highly inflated by algorithmic selection bias. The house always wins.
The house always wins.
So what is the practical takeaway for you, the listener, who is stuck in this cycle? It is learning to catch yourself in the act of cognitive editing.
Yes, catching yourself.
You have to learn to catch yourself when you are cherry-picking memories to fit your partner into a tidy little box just to win an argument in your head.
And which might be even harder, you have to learn to recognize when your partner is deploying a flattering label as a self-protective excuse to avoid taking responsibility for a totally fixable, mundane behavior.
But I have to ask the pessimistic question here.
Uh-oh. Lay it on me.
If confirmation bias is biologically hardwired into our brains to save cognitive energy, are we just doomed? Are we destined to always see our partners through this distorted, cherry-picked lens, no matter how hard we try?
It is a valid fear, but no, we are not doomed. As the Rogers and Soul study on cross-cultural Barnum effects showed, conscious awareness of the bias is literally the first step to dismantling it.
Okay, so we have some hope.
You can't turn off the bias, but you can override it. Once you know your brain is aggressively searching for hits to confirm the label that your partner is a bad texter, you can actively, manually force yourself to look for the misses.
You pause and ask yourself, okay, when was the last time they did reply promptly when we find 3 examples? You force the brain to do the work it's trying to avoid.
Exactly. But recognizing the bias is only half the battle.
Right.
The real challenge comes in how we actually communicate our frustration without relying on the label. Which brings us to the critical tipping point. What happens when this internal bias turns into an external argument?
Right. Because let's return to our kitchen scenario. The recurring disagreement over the delayed replies finally boils over. You are fed up.
It happens.
But because you've internally labeled them a flighty air sign, and because your confirmation bias has provided you with a mountain of cherry-picked evidence over the last 6 months, the conversation completely shifts before it even starts.
It does.
You are no longer talking of a specific, solvable behavior. Hey, you didn't reply to my text at 2 p.m. today. Instead, you launch a full-blown identity attack. You are fundamentally flawed, you are inconsiderate, and you will always be this way because of who you are.
And that subtle shift from critiquing a behavior to attacking an identity is catastrophic for relationship communication.
Catastrophic.
When you attack someone's fundamental identity, you bypass their logical brain and immediately trigger their defensive survival mechanisms. The Allender Center discusses this dynamic brilliantly in terms of intent versus impact.
Intent versus impact.
Yeah.
This is where so many couples get entirely derailed.
Oh, absolutely.
Because the person launching the label often doesn't feel like they're attacking. You might fully intend the Zodiac label as a lighthearted nudge, a way to soften the blow of your anger with a bit of cultural humor. Like, oh, you're just being a typical scatterbrained Gemini today, forgetting to text me.
Exactly. The intent might be playful or even conflict avoidant, but the impact on the partner receiving it is profoundly different.
Right.
The impact is that they feel boxed in, diagnosed, and judged from on high. Dan Allender notes a really sharp truth here. When we use our good intentions to excuse the damaging impact we have on someone else, We are actually engaging in a subtle form of self-righteousness.
We're basically saying, I meant well, therefore your hurt is invalid.
Yes, if your partner feels judged and diagnosed by the label, it doesn't matter if you meant it as a joke. Their emotional walls go up instantly, their capacity for empathy shuts down.
The conversation is no longer about a delayed text message. It has escalated into a battle for their fundamental sense of autonomy and self.
And we know exactly how those battles end, thanks to some of the most robust research in couples therapy, specifically from Dr. John Gottman.
Yes, Dr. Gottman's research at the Love Lab in Seattle provides one of the most staggering, sobering statistics in all of relationship psychology.
It really is. Through meticulous observation of couples arguing, he found that in a staggering 96% of cases, the final outcome of a 15-minute conflict conversation can be accurately predicted by observing just the first 3 minutes.
96%. Let that sink in.
It's wild.
That means if you start the conversation with an identity attack, if you lead with a harsh, label-driven accusation like, you're always ignoring me because you're so self-centered, the conversation is effectively doomed to fail before the 3-minute mark.
You are on an unstoppable crash course. It is a terrifyingly consistent metric. If you start harsh, you end harsh.
We should contextualize this data slightly, though, right?
Yes, absolutely. This 96% metric is based on highly controlled observational laboratory settings, often utilizing specific demographic samples of married couples wired up to heart rate monitors.
And real-life arguments often happen in much messier, less predictable contexts than a clinical lab. You might get interrupted by the dog or a phone call.
True. However, the core underlying physiological principle of emotional escalation remains highly relevant across the board. If you spike their heart rate with an attack in minute 1, reason goes out the window for minute 2 through 15.
I picture it like a game of chess. If your opening move is to aggressively attack the opponent's king, the entire rest of the game is going to be played in pure, desperate defense.
Exactly. No one is cooperating. They are just trying to survive.
So if the harsh startup practically guarantees failure, what is the practical tool to fix it? How do we talk about the frustrating text messages without triggering the 96% crash?
The antidote is combining Gottman's foundational concept of the soft startup with the highly practical framework of I statements, which is detailed beautifully in the Blavity source material we reviewed.
Okay, let's break that down.
A soft startup is an intentional, disciplined communication choice. It deliberately avoids blame, it entirely avoids labels, and it focuses exclusively on your own internal emotional experience of a specific event.
The Blavity article outlines this formula so clearly, and it's something anyone can memorize. Instead of the label-driven, aggressive attack, you're such a typical air sign, always ignoring me, you swap it out for the I statement formula. I feel emotion about specific situation, and I need specific request.
Exactly. Let's apply that formula directly to our recurring example so we can really hear the difference.
Okay.
Instead of the attack, you approach them and say, I feel anxious when you delay your replies to my texts during the workday, and I need us to figure out a better, more consistent way to communicate when we are both busy.
Just look at the structural difference there. You are not diagnosing them. You are not telling them who they are. You are bravely telling them how you feel about a specific, tangible action.
You have given them something concrete to work with.
But I'm going to step into the shoes of the frustrated listener for a second here.
Go for it.
In the heat of the moment, when my feelings are genuinely hurt, when I've been waiting for 3 hours and I'm practically vibrating with anxiety, deploying a structured soft startup feels incredibly unnatural.
Oh, I totally get that.
It sounds like we're reading a corporate HR script like a robot, instead of expressing real, passionate human emotion. It feels fake.
It absolutely feels unnatural at first, and there is a biological reason for that. Our natural, evolutionarily hardwired response to emotional pain is to lash out and defend ourselves. We want to strike back.
Right.
But that script, that robotic feeling, acts as a necessary structural speed bump in your brain. It forces your higher cognitive functions, your prefrontal cortex, to engage, which actively slows down the amygdala's frantic fight-or-flight response.
Oh, wow.
You aren't being a robot. You are being incredibly intentional. You are actively stepping on the brakes to stop that 96% collision course of defensive escalation.
You are consciously prioritizing the long-term health of the relationship over the momentary, fleeting satisfaction of delivering a harsh, label-driven zinger.
Beautifully said.
Okay, I can see why the speed bump is necessary for survival. It keeps the car on the road. But this brings us to the final, perhaps most nuanced hurdle of the entire deep dive.
Let's hear it.
If we have to be so careful, so deliberate, so disciplined with our language to avoid triggering defensiveness, how do modern couples actually integrate this into their daily lives?
Right.
Because let's not pretend otherwise. The cultural, conversational fun of Zodiac banter is very real. People genuinely enjoy it. It's a huge part of modern digital culture. So how do we enjoy the metaphor? How do we have fun with the cultural shorthand without letting it become a rug we sweep our real issues under?
Yeah, how do we successfully return from a cosmic complaint back to the concrete issue of delayed replies?
Exactly.
This is where we bring everything we have discussed today full circle through the integration of that concept we started with. Epistemic humility.
Epistemic humility.
Right. The Allender Center references a profound quote from the theologian Jürgen Moltmann, which suggests that true, deep intimacy requires accepting the mystery of the other person. Love, in its most mature form, liberates us from fixed images. It frees us from the labels.
It's the realization that if you remove the deterministic labels, if you stop assuming you know exactly why they do what they do, you actually allow your partner the space to change.
Yes, you give them the room to grow.
And most importantly, in the context of an argument, you give them the space to explain their actual lived reasons for delaying a text.
Exactly. When you drop the rigid Zodiac assumption, when you step back from the certainty of the label, you might find out that they didn't text you back because they were dealing with severe, uncommunicated work stress.
Or perhaps they were having a silent panic attack. Or maybe they simply got distracted by a phone call and forgot.
You allow actual reality into the relationship rather than permanently attributing their actions to the configuration of their birth chart.
So let's synthesize the limitations we've uncovered today, because when you look at them all together, they point to a very clear, undeniable conclusion about how our brains operate.
Yes, let's recap the limits. First, we have seen that Barnum statements are powerful illusions of accuracy. They feel deeply personal, but are mathematically designed to apply to almost everyone.
Right. Second, we know that confirmation bias acts as a ruthless internal editor, selectively keeping only the memories that fit our preferred label and deleting the evidence that contradicts it.
And third, the research shows that the tone of our conversation in the very first 3 minutes practically guarantees the outcome, meaning harsh, label-driven attacks trigger inevitable, relationship-damaging defense.
And the overarching limitation across all of this, the big takeaway, is that absolutely no external label, whether it is generated by a highly advanced algorithmic AI on Xiaohongshu or an ancient astrological birth chart drawn up thousands of years ago, can ever replace the hard, often uncomfortable, profoundly vulnerable work of actual interpersonal communication.
Precisely. You cannot outsource intimacy.
So the practical viewer value here, the tool we want to leave you with, is a concrete repair script. A way to gently pivot from the cultural metaphor, which is fine to enjoy, back to the real, vulnerable conversation that actually sustains the relationship.
Because that pivot is everything.
What does that pivot actually sound like in practice? How do we bridge the gap?
It sounds like this. Hey, I know we always joke about your sign making you a terrible texter, but when that happens in reality, I realize I'm actually just feeling really anxious and disconnected when you don't reply for hours. Can we sit down and talk about our expectations for texting during the workday?
That is fantastic. It's a masterclass in tone. It acknowledges the joke. It doesn't shame them for the cultural banter, but it immediately pivots inward to the vulnerable emotion. I feel anxious.
And it ends with a collaborative, future-focused request for a specific behavioral change.
It invites them to solve the problem with you rather than defending themselves against you.
It turns a battleground back into a partnership.
So we don't have to throw out the fun of astrology entirely. You can keep reading your horoscopes. We just have to stop using it as a rug to sweep our real relationship dirt under.
Exactly. The label can be a playful entry point, a way to break the ice, but it cannot be the final destination of the conversation.
Okay, we have covered a massive amount of psychological ground today, from 1948 classrooms to modern AI algorithms. Let's distill this all down into our 3 key takeaways for you, the listener, to carry with you.
Number 1. Zodiac labels and personality categories feel highly accurate due to the Barnum effect and confirmation bias, but in the context of romantic relationships, they often serve as psychological fields to mask concrete, solvable behaviors, like a partner's delayed text replies.
Number 2, relying on these cosmic labels during a moment of conflict almost always triggers defensive communication and identity attacks, which, according to Gottman's 96% rule, shifts the focus entirely away from the real issue and practically guarantees a failed, unresolved argument.
And number 3. Replacing those cosmic labels with a stance of epistemic humility, utilizing Gottman's soft startups, and relying on structured I statements breaks the destructive cycle of defensiveness and paves the way for genuine repair, behavioral change, and much deeper connection.
It ultimately comes down to a daily choice, doesn't it? Choosing genuine curiosity about your partner over the comfortable illusion of certainty.
It really does.
Which leads me to a final thought for you to mull over as we wrap up today's deep dive. We spend so much of our precious time dissecting personality tests, reading daily horoscopes, and even consulting complex algorithms to figure out exactly who our partners are supposed to be. But if we spend even half as much time studying our partner's actual shifting daily emotional needs as we do analyzing their star charts, how much deeper could our capacity for love actually grow?
That is the real question. When we finally look at the living, breathing person instead of the two-dimensional label, we open the door to actual intimacy.
If this conversation made you think of a relationship, like, subscribe to AI Dialogue Lab, share it with someone who needs it, and turn on the bell.